الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون الله يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. How's everyone today? Alhamdulillah. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي رب زدني علما اللهم فقهنا في الدين اللهم إني أسألك علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا ورزقا طيبا اللهم انفعنا بما علمتنا وعلمنا ما ينفعنا وزدنا علما آمين. Okay. We learned about some of the traits of the muttaqeen in the lesson that we covered yesterday. One of their traits is that they establish salah. Okay, and this morning you learned a little bit more about what it means to establish salah. We learned that Uqba ibn Amir, he reports, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no Muslim performs wudu, ablution, meaning performs wudu accurately, properly, and then prays 2 units of prayer with his heart and direction focused, except that Jannah will be necessary for him. So this is clearly one of those deeds that takes a person towards Jannah. Which deed clearly takes a person towards Jannah? Yes, but how? In any which way, whichever way? Yes, and before that, performing proper wudu. And praying how? Even if it's just 2 units. Praying with what? Heart and direction focused. The heart and direction focused. So we all need to do what? Check ourselves in light of this. Then also, today happens to be the day of Jumu'ah. And the day of Jumu'ah, in comparison to other days of the week, is a very special day. We learn that Anas ibn Malik, he reports, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, verily there is a marketplace in Jannah to which the people will come every Friday. The wind will scatter fragrance on their faces and clothes and will increase their excellence and beauty. They will return to their families after having been increased in excellence and beauty, and they will say, by Allah, we have seen you increased in excellence and beauty. They will say, by Allah, you as well have increased in excellence and beauty. So we need to ask ourselves, on the day of Jumu'ah, which is a special day amongst the days of the week, do we pay special attention towards those deeds that will be a means of taking people towards Jannah? Do we try to excel in good deeds? Or do we only prepare for what's happening over the weekend? Do we just, identify certain targets like cleaning the house and sleeping in and, shopping, etc.? Or do we think about excelling on the day of Jumu'ah in particular and striving ahead, going ahead in terms of good deeds? Okay, now before we move on to the next lesson, when you look at this last verse of lesson 2, okay, which verse would that be? What's the last verse of lesson 2? Okay, so verse number 5 of Surah Al-Baqarah. Who can read out that verse? You don't have to recite it, you can read it out. Who can read out verse number 5? Just the Arabic text, you can read out the meanings. Yes, go ahead, Fatima. Where's the mic? You can just read out the text and read out the running translation. Verse number 5, Surah Al-Baqarah.
أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. Those are upon right guidance from their Lord, and it is those who are the successful.
Okay. أولئك على هدى. Those are upon guidance. So we discussed what this means. Upon guidance, ala. This term ala is used here to indicate a superiority. To indicate a superiority. The ones who have been described here, the muttaqin, are upon guidance. Indicating what? That they're following it. They are more elevated in position because of it. Ala is a preposition, right? Fi also is a preposition. But you will find in the Qur'an the preposition fi being used for dalal, which is misguidance, the opposite of huda. And ala being used for huda, for guidance, because obviously guidance is superior to dalal. So, for example, in verse 24 of Surah Saba, we find that Allah declares, قُلْ مَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. قُلْ, say, مَنْ يَرْزُقُكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Who provides for you from the heavens and the earth? قُلِ اللَّهُ, say Allah. وَإِنَّا أَوْ إِيَّاكُمْ لَعَلَى هُدَى أَوْ فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. And indeed, we or you are either upon guidance or in clear error. Say, who provides for you from the heavens and the earth? Say Allah. And indeed, we or you are either ala huda, la ala huda, upon guidance, or fi dalalim mubin, in clear error. So what is superior? Guidance. What is inferior? Dalal. And when you are upon something, you go in whichever direction, whatever it is that you're upon is going. Right? So such people are muflihun, the ones who are successful. Think again about how we learned that more taqwa leads to more guidance. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make this supplication, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wat-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. Oh Allah, I ask you for huda, which is guidance, at-tuqa, which is taqwa, righteousness, piety, wal-afaf, which has been translated as chastity, remaining pure at heart, abstaining from indecencies, and al-ghina, which is a kind of richness, contentment. Not always looking at, oh, I don't have this, I don't have that, she has this, he has that. Oh Allah, I ask you for number one, guidance, piety, taqwa, afaf, and ghina. And think about it. When a person makes a dua, this teaches you about what this person's priorities really are. Check yourself in light of this. What kinds of du'as do you make? Are your du'as mostly about this dunya only? Things you want here? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he's asking Allah for guidance and taqwa and afaf and ghina. So we also need to do the same. We need to include this supplication in our list of supplications as well. Of the virtues associated with the day of Jumu'ah is the fact that towards the end of the day, there is 1 hour in which the supplications are accepted. We don't know specifically when that time is, but scholars do say that it is sometime after Asr. That's one opinion. So as you engage in more supplication on this day of Jumu'ah, include this supplication. Make dua for more guidance, more piety, and also chastity, and also ghina, contentment. Okay? All right, anything anybody would like to share in light of the previous lesson before we move on? Any question, any thoughts, any reflections that you might want to share? Yes, Saida.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yesterday you mentioned
Where's the mic? Can we pass the mic over quickly?
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
We talked about yesterday reciting Surah Al-Baqarah. It will expel the shaitan for 3 nights and or 3 days, depending when you recite it. Does that also include if you don't know how to recite? Can you play the audio, or is that the same? Would the same value will have that?
Wallahu a'lam. Allah knows best. It's better to recite if you can recite. Okay? And if you cannot recite, then yes, you can play the audio. Okay? But do try to recite yourself. Take out time to recite yourself. Okay? And even if it is that you cannot do this every day, okay? Do it sometimes. You can fix a routine. Like, every 2 weeks you're going to do it. Or every week you're going to do it. Maybe you're going to take out time during the weekend. And you would recite. So, of course, the virtue associated with reciting it yourself is going to be far greater, right? The reward that you will accumulate, far greater, much more superior. Okay? But yes, if it is not possible, then the next best option would be to have the audio recitation played. But in that case also, one should listen to the recitation. It shouldn't be that you're playing the recitation and then nobody's listening. It's like background noise. It should not be treated that way. It's recitation of the Qur'an, right? So one needs to pay attention to the recitation. Yeah, it should be. Again, if one is not able to recite the entire surah, recite some portion, because there is a lot of barakah associated with this surah. Leaving it is hasra, as we learned from hadith. So don't abandon it. Make sure that you're reciting the surah on a regular basis. Okay? All right. Lesson number 3. Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 6 and 7. In Surah Al-Fatiha, we learned about 3 categories of people. Which ones? First one was which one? Okay. Alladhina an'amta alayhim. Okay. Second category. Al-maghdubi alayhim. And third, ad-dallin. So the first category, alladhina an'amta alayhim, the ones favored by Allah. That's one category. We want to be in that category. These are the ones who have ilm, beneficial ilm, and also beneficial or acceptable deeds. Ilmun nafi' and amalun salih. The second category, al-maghdubi alayhim, those who have earned Allah's wrath. Because perhaps they do have knowledge, but they don't put it in practice. They have knowledge, but they behave as if they don't. And then the third category, ad-dallin, the ones who are astray. So they don't really have sound knowledge, and of course they don't have correct implementation. They might have knowledge, but it's problematic, faulty knowledge. And so their implementation is also faulty. In the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, we learn about the ones who are muflihun, successful. The ones who are muttaqeen, meaning they are responsible when it comes to the rights of Allah and also the rights of people. After describing the characteristics of the muttaqeen, the pure believers, who actually benefit from the Qur'an, they receive guidance, they internalize guidance, Allah now mentions the state of those who don't benefit from the guidance that has been arranged. And these are pure disbelievers. Pure disbelievers. So in this surah, Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah begins with the mention of these 3 types of people. Okay? Number 1, the pure believers. We learned about them in the first 5 verses. And then there is mention of pure disbelievers. And then after this, those who claim to be believers with their tongues only, but they're actually not believers. Their actions prove that they're actually not believers. So their case is a little bit more complicated. So in other words, Allah begins with the mention of what is tayyib, pure believers. Then what is khabith, what is impure, pure disbelievers. And then akhbath, what is even more impure. So one way is the way of the muttaqeen, the way of iman, the way of yaqeen, the way of performing and establishing salah, the way of giving in the way of Allah, infaq. So such people with these traits are the ones who are recipients of guidance. They bring into action what it is that Allah commands. Such people are successful. The other way is the way of disbelief, in which being knowledgeable and being ignorant seem to be the same. It doesn't make a difference whether a person knows what Allah has commanded or does not. This person is not bringing knowledge into action. And this behavior is elaborated here in verse number 6 and verse number 7. Now, why are different types of people mentioned right at the beginning of this surah? Because the Qur'an is to guide people. It is a book that guides. It informs us about different types of people, not so that we point fingers, this one is like that one is this category, the other one is this category. It is so that we introspect. We check ourselves. And we identify where we stand. And we also identify where we want to be, which category we want to be in. Because successful people translate their knowledge into action. Right? And if a person learns, acquires knowledge, and then doesn't put into action what needs to be put into action, this results in a person incurring the wrath of Allah. This is problematic. So here Allah mentions, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, indeed those who disbelieve. سواء عليهم, it is all the same for them. أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. It is all the same for them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe. إن الذين كفروا, indeed those who disbelieve. Inna means indeed. So, inna coming at the beginning of a statement, the beginning of a verse, it's adding emphasis to that statement. This is a factual statement made with emphasis. Indeed, alladhina kafaru, those who disbelieve. They are described in a certain way. And this is a factual description. Alladhina means the ones who, this is repeated, the singular is alladhi. And we have looked at this word before also. Alladhina an'amta, we learned, right? Alladhina yuqimuna as-salah. So alladhina is the plural of alladhi. And kafaru from kaf, fa, ra. The waw at the end here in this word kafaru indicates that this is plural. Okay? So it doesn't mean he disbelieved. Kafaru doesn't mean he disbelieved. It means they disbelieved. Kafara would mean he disbelieved. But this is not kafara. It is kafaru. Right? Kufr. What is it? Kufr is disbelief. It is covering the truth. Covering the truth, which means denial and disbelief, or covering up a blessing, which means ingratitude. Kufr can mean both things. Okay, so one meaning of kufr is what? Covering of the truth, which is disbelief or denial, right? And another meaning of kufr is ingratitude, covering up of a blessing, not acknowledging a blessing. So kufr can be understood in both meanings. And it is a term that is used to describe some people's choice. People choose to deny the truth. People choose to be ungrateful for blessings. So here, alladhina kafaru is referring to whom? Those who make the choice of disbelieving. In other words, they choose to not believe in what they're required to believe in. And we learned earlier about the muttaqeen, right? One of their main traits is what? Alladhina yu'minuna bil ghaib. They believe in the unseen. They believe in everything that Allah expects them to believe in. Alladhina kafaru don't do that. They don't believe in al-ghaib. Okay? Now, these people, alladhina kafaru, could be from the mushrikeen of Makkah at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because they did not accept him as a messenger. That's kufr. That's covering up of the truth. They could also be from the Ahlul Kitab, people of the scripture, the Jews and the Christians. Because they were familiar with divine revelation, weren't they? They were familiar with messengers, but they didn't want to accept the last and final messenger. They did not want to accept the Qur'an as divine revelation. That's kufr. And then apart from them, it could also include anybody else. Anyone who covers up the truth, rejects the truth, denies it. So again, the term kufr, linguistically, it is taghutiyah. And what is taghutiyah? To cover something, to hide something. Which is why the word kafir is used for the one who covers something, the one who hides something. And that is why the term kafir in its literal sense can even be used for a farmer, a tiller, a cultivator, because that person hides seeds under layers of soil. Okay? The term kafir in its literal sense can also be used for the night, because the night covers things with what? Darkness. In fact, a cloud also can be referred to as kafir because it covers the light of the sun. The term kuffar, even in the Qur'an, has been used for tillers, farmers, those who sow seeds. For example, in Surah Hadid, verse 20. كَمَثَلِ غَيْثٍ أَعْجَبَ الْكُفَّارَ نَبَاتُهُ. ثُمَّ يَهِيدُ فَتَرَاهُ مُصْفَرًّا. Like the example of a rain whose resulting plant growth pleases the tillers, kuffar, then it dries and you see it turned yellow. That's the linguistic meaning. Okay? But when it comes to the technical meaning of kufr is disbelief. To disbelieve in that which a person must believe in, and to cover the truth. To declare, I don't believe in the truth. Covering the innate disposition, the fitrah that Allah has created His creation with, of being upon tawheed. So kufr is disbelief, it is infidelity, it is ingratitude. It is not tasdeeq, it's not affirmation of the truth, it is takdeeb, it's denial of the truth. Because within the fitrah, the innate disposition of a human being, there is that ability that Allah has placed to recognize Allah, to believe in His oneness. And also keep in mind that the term kafir is used to describe the way and the reality of a certain people who choose to disbelieve, who choose to be ungrateful. It's not supposed to be taken as a foul word, a derogatory term, right? That you can use to hurl at someone just to claim to be superior. It's not to be used in that way. Also come back to the definition of iman, right? Which is the opposite of kufr. Iman is tasdeeq, affirmation at the level of the heart, of the truth. And it is also qubul, iqrar, declaration of the truth at the level of the tongue, declaring la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. And then it's also something else, id'an, compliance, at the level of the limbs, right? Kufr is the opposite. And again, when it comes to iman, tasdeeq alone is not enough. You also need the iqrar, the qubul, and also the id'an. So, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who choose to disbelieve in what they are required to believe in, which is al-ghayb. Also, there are two kinds of kufr. One is akbar, the other is asghar. Akbar meaning major, asghar meaning minor. So, kufr akbar has to do with one's creed, one's belief system. Okay? So, for example, denying the resurrection would come in this category. Resurrection after death. Denying this is what kind of kufr? Major. Not considering Allah to be ahkamul hakimin, the most just of those who judge. This would also be in the same category. That's a major kind of kufr. In terms of wordings, this would also include mocking the verses of divine revelation, and also cursing the prophets or the angels. These are major acts of kufr. At times you will find kufr being manifested in action. Like, for example, prostrating before a tree, considering it to be divine. It's a major act of kufr. When you look at minor kufr that is asghar, this type does not take a person out of the folds of Islam. Okay? Like, for example, taking an oath by the Kaaba. Right? This was called shirk by Abdullah ibn Umar. We learned that Abdullah ibn Umar here heard a man saying, "No, I swear by the Kaaba." Ibn Umar said to him, "I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, he who swears by anyone but Allah, faqad ashraka, has committed shirk." Okay? So, there are certain acts that are classified as minor acts of kufr. They don't necessarily take a person out of the folds of Islam. There are definitely blameworthy practices, but they're not classified as major acts of kufr. For example, also we learn Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, سباب المسلم فسوق وقتاله كفر. Verbally abusing a Muslim is an act of wickedness, fisq. And fighting him is an act of disbelief, not the type that takes him out of the folds of Islam. It's minor. Then also included within this category of minor kufr would be denying blessings, being ungrateful, not accepting someone's ihsan. Also, keep in mind, the one who is sinful by committing a major sin is not labeled a kafir, because that can then become very, very problematic. Because then what would happen? Any Muslim claims to be a Muslim. As soon as they commit a major sin, you're saying they become a disbeliever? Okay? So, this verse is referring to kufr akbar, not kufr asghar. Okay? It's referring to major kufr, not minor kufr. Alright? So here, innal ladhina kafaru, indeed those who disbelieve, this needs to be understood correctly. This is referring to those who disbelieve, not those who are like ungrateful. Okay, those who commit minor acts of kufr. No, this is referring to those who commit major acts of kufr. Okay, so what is stated about them? سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. It is all the same for them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe. Now, sawa'un alayhim, it is all the same to them. The term sawa'un is from sin waw, yeah, and this term is used for when something is equal or leveled from both sides. So this is a combination of sawa'un and alayhim. Both terms have been combined to give what meaning? It is all the same to them. Okay, and alayhim, as we've learned earlier, is a combination of ala and him, just like we learned in ghayril maghdubi alayhim, right? And the term sawa'un, when it comes with ala, like it does here, it means there is no difference. It's the same. So what is the same upon them? Alladhina kafaru. It will make no difference whether you warn them or do not warn them. Your warning them, your not warning them is the same, because the result is they will not believe. So it is all the same to them. أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ, whether you warned them. Look at this word, أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ. It begins with hamza. And this hamza is used for interrogation. It is known as harf istifham. Istifham means question. So in the English language, when we pose a question in a written format, we will add a question mark at the end. That indicates that a question is being asked. In Arabic, you don't have these kinds of punctuation marks. Okay, so the letter a, this hamza this harf istifham, is indicating that here a question is being posed. And the word andarutahum, so the first this is for interrogation. And then after that, andarutahum is what is left, right? So this word, andaruta, is from the root letters nun, dal, ra. Nun, dal, ra. And the ta at the end, andaruta, it gives the meaning of you, just like an amta we learned earlier, right? And andaruta, hum means them. Andaruta is a verb, fi'l, of the past tense. Verbs have tenses, right? And a verb of the past tense in Arabic is known as fi'l madi. Okay, and don't worry, inshallah, this will be repeated many, many times and you will learn this. Okay, so just listen. So it is all the same to them whether you warned them, meaning in the past. Okay, now, andarota from nun dal ra, right? From which we derive the term indar. Indar means to inform someone about imminent danger, about something harmful that is going to happen. And it's not just to inform them, but also instill fear within them so that they take precaution. So indar is to warn about something and give knowledge, to instill an element of fear, to caution. So it's done with affection, it's done with sincerity and care, it's done in a timely way. It's not a crude threat. Okay? It's like how a mother would encourage a child to study before the exam because she doesn't want the child to fail. Okay? It's like, a parent telling a child who's climbing up different types of furniture, is not ready to do that yet, might fall, that don't do that because you might fall. Okay? So this warning is done in a timely way, because the objective is to caution, to save from harm. You see, the role of a nabi, the role of a prophet, is very similar to the role of a parent. And in particular, think about the role of a mother. She goes through so much strife from the time of the conception of the child, throughout all the different stages, showing deep concern for her child, and she doesn't give up because she's so sincere, right? Nadhir is a sincere warner, not just warner, sincere warner. Rusul say to their nations, as we learn in the Qur'an, Inni nadhirul lakum. A messenger would be sent to his nation and he would say, Inni nadhirul lakum. Indeed, I am a sincere warner to you for your benefit. And remember that Rusul warned their nations about harmful consequences of their actions in this world and the hereafter. Because sins have consequences in this world and the hereafter. So it is all the same to them, meaning to alladhina kafaru, whether you warned them of what? Of a severe punishment. Or lam tundirhum, you did not warn them. Lam is a word of negation, just like la. Okay. And the word tundirhum, again from noon, dal, ra. And the ta in the beginning, tundirhum, it gives the meaning of you. Now this is also a fi'l, a verb, but it is a verb of present future tense. Fi'l mudari'. So it is all the same to them whether you warned them or you did not warn them. You warn them now or in the future. The result will be what? La, not yu'minun, they will believe. La again, a word of negation. And yu'minun, this is repeated. We've learned this earlier also. From Hamza Mim Nun, from Iman. Iman means belief. So this is what will remain the same. Whether you warn them, you continue warning them, the result will be they will not believe. This is the state of alladhina kafaru that is being described here. La yu'minun. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam invited the people of Makkah towards Tawheed, to share with them the message of Islam, he ascended Mount Safa and he said, Ya Sabaha. And this call, Ya Sabaha, for the Arabs was like an appeal being made by someone who's drawing people's attention towards a very important danger, very important matter. So the people heard him saying this, and they gathered around him immediately because he was sadiq and ameen for them, the most trustworthy, the most truthful. And then he said to them, if I told you that horsemen were advancing to attack you from the valley on the other side of this mountain, will you believe me? They replied, yes. We have always found you truthful. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, فَإِنِّي نَذِيرٌ لَكُمْ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ عَذَابٍ شَدِيدٍ. I am a plain warner to you of a coming severe punishment. So, if you think about it, this statement what we're learning here in verse number 6 gives comfort to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's not to be taken as an excuse for the disbelievers. And also, it's not supposed to put someone who is warning other people of the consequences of sins to go into despair such that he loses hope and he thinks that it's all the same whether I warn people, don't warn them, they're not going to believe, so why should I even warn? That's not the objective. The ones warned are also actually being cautioned here about their repeated rejection of the truth. And again, as I mentioned, there's also consolation in this for the one who is warning people again and again, seeing no results. We should also know that each person that we teach deen to, we invite towards tawheed, towards rectitude, towards abandoning sins, will not necessarily accept this invitation straight away. Because hidayah, guidance, is in the hands of Allah. Tawfiq is from Him. Our job is to convey the truth as best as we can. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a very strong desire for the people to be guided. We learn about this in Surah Al-Kahf, right? Today is the day of Jumu'ah. You must have recited Surah Al-Kahf, and if you haven't, you should, inshallah. What do we learn in the 6th verse? فَلَعَلَّكَ بَاخِعٌ نَفْسَكَ عَلَىٰ آثَارِهِمْ إِن لَّمْ يُؤْمِنُوا بِهَذَا الْحَدِيثِ أَسَفًا. And perhaps you would kill yourself through grief over them, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if they do not believe in this message and out of sorrow. But Allah also declares in Surah Al-Qasas, verse 56, إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ. You, meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is being told, you cannot guide whom you love. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on one hand is being told that there are some people who will not accept the advice you're giving. Whether you warn them, you don't warn them, they will not believe. It's going to happen. And on the other hand, he's being given reassurance also. It's not his fault that this happens. He's putting in the effort that is required. People are not believing. Guidance is in the hands of Allah, not in the hands of people. Think about, again, mothers, parents in general, but mothers more specifically. They want their children to do everything correctly because they want to protect them from what could be harmful. But do the children listen all the time? No. Mothers want their children to sleep at a certain time so that they can get up at a certain time. But do the children listen? They want them to study in a certain way at a certain time, but do they listen? So, you cannot guide whom you love. But then does that mean you should stop trying? No. You continue to try. And you will continue to try to guide people if your love for them is actually genuine and sincere. Just like a mother, right? Even if it is that she knows through her experience of maybe multiple years, she advises, they don't listen. Then maybe they do, then they stop listening. Then maybe they do again, then they stop listening. She continues to advise because her love is sincere. It's genuine. So, many times children don't respond positively to the advice of their parents because they are immature. And as they become more mature, they start to become more receptive, or at least more appreciative. Nations also act like immature children with their prophets. Right? The prophet is tiring himself, exhausting himself in advising the nation. The nation's not listening. At times, a mother will feel a lot of guilt if it is that she advises her child, to study in advance before the exam comes, and then the child doesn't do very well. She sometimes will consider it to be her own fault, although really it wasn't. The messengers warn people. They warn them again. They warn them again. But they cannot coerce people. They cannot force them. They're not to be blamed for people's wrong choices. A doctor assesses a patient, prescribes treatment, performs procedures also to help the patient. The patient doesn't take the advice. continues to become more and more unwell. Can you blame the doctor? No. So as those who inherit knowledge from the prophets, it is our responsibility that we also convey to others what we know, what we've learned. But if people don't take it, they don't accept it, should we lose hope? Should we go into despair? No. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 105, we learn, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum la yadurrukum man dhalla idha ihtadaytum. O you who have believed, upon you is responsibility for yourselves. Those who have gone astray will not harm you when you have been guided. Now, one important point to note before we move on. This does not mean that no disbeliever is ever going to become a believer. That's not what this means. Okay? This is referring to specific disbelievers. Okay? Because there have been in the past those who have opposed the truth with a lot of stubbornness, a lot of arrogance, and they died in that state. Like Abu Jahl at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But also keep in mind, there have been people who have been staunch disbelievers, but then they became believers. In fact, some of the best of believers. Their hearts awakened. Allah granted them hidayah. And there are many, like, for example, to mention one, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. Abu Jahl did not accept the truth. He remained a disbeliever, staunch disbeliever. But his son Ikrimah used to be very supportive of his father, was a great opponent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but then what happened? He embraced Islam. He became a believer. We learn in Surah Al-An'am verses 110 and 111 that Allah mentions, and we will turn away their hearts and their eyes just as they refused to believe in it the first time, and we will leave them in their transgression, wandering blindly. And even if we had sent down to them the angels with the message and the dead spoke to them, and we gathered together every created thing in front of them, they would not believe unless Allah should will. But most of them of that are ignorant. So these are the staunch kinds of disbelievers who don't come around. There are these types of people. They exist. In Surah Yasin also we learn in verses 10 and 11, وَسَوَاءٌ عَلَيْهِمْ أَأَنذَرْتَهُمْ أَمْ لَمْ تُنذِرْهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ إِنَّمَا تُنذِرُ مَنِ اتَّبَعَ الذِّكْرَ وَخَشِيَ الرَّحْمَنَ بِالْغَيْبِ فَبَشِّرْهُ بِمَغْفِرَةٍ وَأَجْرٍ كَرِيمٍ. And it is all the same for them whether you warn them or do not warn them, they will not believe. You can only warn one who follows the message and fears the most merciful unseen, so give him good tidings of forgiveness and noble reward. So kufr includes rejecting what the Anbiya brought of the truth and to not follow what the Anbiya brought, despite accepting that at some level to be the truth. Okay? So, there were some people amongst the mushrikeen of Makkah, there were some people even amongst the Ahlul Kitab, who did recognize the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to a certain degree, but then consciously, deliberately decided to reject. These are the types of people that are being referred to here. Like Abu Jahl, he would actually, in the nighttime, get up when less people were around, and he would go and stand outside close to the home of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam so that he could hear him reciting the Qur'an, because it had an impact on him. And he would meet some of his other companions who would do that also in the secrecy of the night. And when they would accidentally bump into each other, they would say, no, we're not going to do this again. Why are you here? Why are you here? We're here to learn to hear the recitation of the Qur'an. But we shouldn't be doing this. Okay, so we're not going to do it tomorrow. And again, they would do the same thing. So what was bringing them out from their homes in the nighttime? Some recognition of the truth, right? But Abu Jahl decided what? He's not going to accept Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a messenger because he's from a different tribe. And so if he accepts that other tribe has a messenger, his tribe will not be as great, will have to be inferior. So on this basis, he rejected the truth. This is kufr. And then there were some from amongst the Ahlul Kitab who also did the same, like Huyay ibn Akhtab from amongst the Jews. He was of the rabbis of the Jews. He recognized the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is, of course, in the Madani era, after migration. But despite recognizing him, he decided, I'm not going to accept him as a messenger because he's not from our lineage. He's not from the Bani Israel. He's from the Banu Ismail. How can I accept him? This is kufr. And so here Allah mentions next in the verse after verse number 6, in verse number 7, خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ. Allah has set a seal upon their hearts. وَعَلَىٰ سَمْعِهِمْ, and upon their hearing. وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ, and over their vision is a veil. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for them is a great punishment. خَتَمَ اللَّهُ, Allah has set a seal. The term khatam, ha, ta, mim, it's used for seal, a seal that is placed upon something. And notice here, khatam Allahu, Allahu, this is Ismul Jalala, right? But notice the dhamma at the end, Allahu. This indicates that Allah is the doer of the action. Which action? Khatama, of sealing, placing a seal. Okay? So Allah placed a seal upon the hearts of these people. That is what is being mentioned here. And the term khatama is similar to taba'a. Taba'a also is used in the Qur'an. It gives the same meaning of placing a seal upon something. And setting a seal or placing a seal upon something means that nothing can go in, nothing can come out. That's what it means. It's as if the matter is closed, it has ended. You may have heard the expression khatmul Qur'an. What is that used for? Completion of the Qur'an, right? So Allah has set a seal, ala, upon qulubihim, their hearts. Qulub is the plural of qalb. Qalb from qaf lam ba. And in the Qur'an, the term qalb, it is used in the meaning of the faculty of reasoning, understanding. It's often used to denote perception. Okay, so it's not just the heart filled with emotions. Qalb is used for the faculty of reasoning, understanding. And with regards to Iman, in particular, it's not just the mind that's involved, it's also the feelings that are involved. And from qaf lam ba qalaba, literally, it means to turn about. And the heart actually never stays the same. It never stays the same, it's turning about. Feelings don't stay the same, the state of the heart changes a lot. Which is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would make this supplication, Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. O turner of the hearts, keep my heart firm upon your religion, because the state of the heart is always fluctuating. So qulub means hearts, and also you can say minds. Because again, the Qur'an uses this term qalb in the meaning of perception, understanding, reasoning. So when the hearts become sealed, when the faculties, the perception, the minds become sealed, what does that mean? Nothing good comes into them, these hearts. No good can ever reach these hearts. No good comes forth from these hearts. And the hearts are mentioned because, the hearts are the central systems placed within human beings. The sealing of the hearts is the inability to accept and understand the truth. So Allah has set a seal upon their hearts. وَعَلَى سَمْعِهِمْ, and upon their hearing. So the ears hear nothing good from which they can benefit. سَمْعِهِمْ, their hearing. Again, him is like hum, it means them, right? And sam'a from sin mim ain, sam'a is used in two ways. Number one, the ears, and number two, the ability to hear, hearing. And sam'a is considered to be a mufrad term, a singular term, but it gives a plural meaning. So here, sam'a is used in the meaning of ears or hearing. Both are correct. So the sealing of the ears or the hearing is inability to benefit from the truth that one hears. Okay? It's not to be taken in the literal sense. This doesn't imply that, something is plugging the ears of these people in the physical sense. Because again, come back to the example of Abu Jahl. He would leave his home in the nighttime so that he could go and hear the recitation of the Qur'an, hear the recitation. Right? But did he benefit from it? In the end, he decides to do what? Be amazed by its beauty, but to reject it. He decides to reject it. So what is this? A clear example of the hearing being sealed. وَعَلَىٰ أَبْصَارِهِمْ غِشَاوَةٌ, and over their vision is a veil. أَبْصَارِهِمْ, combination of أَبْصَار and him. أَبْصَار, plural of basar, ba, sad, ra. And basar is also understood two ways. Number one, in the meaning of eyes, and number two, ability to see, vision, sight. And the term ghishawa from ghain sheen ya. And in this case, the ya is harf illa. Okay? Hence you don't see it. Ghashya means to cover or to veil something from above. Generally, the term ghishawa is used for a veil through which one can see a little bit. It's translucent, but it prevents one from seeing clearly. It's a translucent cover. And the term ghisha, it is used for a film or a coating or a membrane that covers something. So covering of the eyes, a veil that prevents people from seeing the truth and accepting it. Even if they could see a little bit through the ghishawa, they would still not benefit. They cannot obtain guidance by looking at an amazing miracle. They cannot see the signs of Allah all around them as signs of Allah. They don't reflect upon the signs. So what is their outcome? وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for them, meaning these disbelievers, الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, those who remain firm upon their kufr, and they die upon that, for them is a great punishment. وَلَهُمْ, this lam is the same lam that we learned about before also in lillahi. Sometimes you see it with a kasra, sometimes you see it with a fatha. Just like hum and him, they're different forms of the same word. So, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ, and for them is a great punishment. Now the term adab from ayn dal ba is from the word adb. And this word, of course, is repeated. So it's good to understand it very well one time. Okay? This term adab is from the word adb. Adb means, number one, to be unable to eat and sleep because of extreme thirst. Imagine if you had so much thirst that you were tossing and turning without access to any water at all, and you couldn't even sleep as a result. So adab is to be unable to eat and sleep because of extreme thirst. It's a constant agony. That's what adab means, constant agony. And it's used for a combination of physical and mental agony. Adab is mental and physical discomfort. The term adaba, ayn dal ba, adaba, it means he abstained from food because of excessive thirst. And the term adbun, from the same root letters, ayn dal ba, adbun, secondly, is that which is sweet. Adbun is that which is sweet. The term udhuba is used for sweetness. Ta'adhib has the meaning of removing the sweetness of something. Okay, so adbun, that which is sweet. Uduba, sweetness. And what is ta'adhib? Ta'adhib has the meaning of removing the sweetness of something. So adab is to remove the sweetness of something. A punishment that ends pleasure and enjoyment, especially that of the hereafter. And this meaning of adbun we find used in the Qur'an also in verse 12 of Surah Fatir. وَمَا يَسْتَوِي الْبَحْرَانِ هَذَا عَذْبٌ فُرَاتٌ. And not alike are the two bodies of water. One is fresh and sweet, palatable for drinking, and one is milhun ujaj, salty and bitter. So adab is to remove the sweetness of something. Thirdly, adab is used in the meaning of imprisonment and prevention, confinement. So basically, adab is a state that takes sweetness away, in which there is confinement also, in which there is constant agony as well. And the term azim, from ayn, dha, mim, ever great, grand, tremendous, huge. The opposite of azim is haqir, and something is considered to be trivial. Azim is that which is big in size, great, but also it has quwwah, it has strength, and shiddah, severity. The term azam, from ayn, dha, mim, is used for a big bone. It's used for the biggest, largest limb that's strong and tough. Now, when we say Subhana Rabbiyal Azim in ruku', and Azim is one of the names of Allah, right? The meaning of Al-Azim is the most great, the one who is possessed of ultimate greatness. So, this word azim being used for adab, indicating what? Number one, the enormity of the punishment and the intensity of the punishment. Okay? Because another word used for what is big in Arabic is kabir, right? Kabir also means big. The opposite of kabir is saghir. Saghir means small. But azim is bigger than kabir. Here, kabir is not used, azim is used, because azim is bigger than kabir. And haqir, okay, which is the opposite of azim, it is smaller than saghir. Okay? So why is this adab described as being azim? This great punishment is that of the hellfire, and there is in fact no punishment greater than it. There's no punishment greater than it, in terms of its enormity and also in terms of its intensity. So the people described here, because of their denial, because of their rejecting the truth, will have in the hereafter a great punishment. The one who commits kufr upon kufr becomes desensitized, does not get guidance, does not internalize it. Because hidayah, guidance, it is given to the one who has talab, who has yearning for it. We learn when it comes to the punishment of the hellfire, Abu Hurairah, he reports, while we were in the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we heard a terrible sound. Thereupon Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, do you know what that sound is? When we answered, Allah and His Messenger know best, he said that is a stone which was thrown into the hellfire 70 years ago and has been constantly falling until now, when it finally reached the bottom. Now think about the enormity of the hellfire. Now think about adab that is azim. May Allah protect us all from it. Ameen. We'd also learn that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, indeed a giant rock can be thrown from the brink of the hellfire and it will continue to fall into it for 70 years without reaching the bottom of it. And Umar radiallahu anhu used to say, increase in your remembrance of the fire, for its heat is extreme, its bottom is distant, and its whips are of iron. Now again, who is being spoken of in these two verses? Who's being described here? Who's being mentioned? Alladina kafaru, those who reject the truth. Kufr is of different types. It's of different levels. The kufr of Abu Jahl is not the same as the kufr of your tolerant Christian or Jew co-worker in your workplace, who doesn't really interfere with your worship. In fact, in some ways, will even support you. Will arrange like a place for you to pray in the office. Kufr is of levels, right? These verses are talking about the staunch, pure disbelievers. For example, those at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, such as Abu Jahl, Abu Lahab, or the leaders of the Ahlul Kitab like Huyay ibn Akhtab, and after them anyone who has this kind of an attitude. Now, there are two main factors that lead to kufr, rejection of the truth. Number one is arrogance, and number two is too much love of dunya. Okay? Because many people will reject the truth because they will simply say, why should I believe in what is being said? Why should I change my ways? I'm as good as it gets. Arrogance, right? And then number two, love of dunya. Fir'aun, for example, rejected the truth because he was obsessive about his worldly leadership. He didn't want to lose that. And when does a person deny? After having knowledge about something, knowledge about the truthfulness of something, then refusing to implement, this is what incurs the wrath of Allah. And also, within the innate disposition of human beings, there is that ability to recognize the truth and accept it. But those who cover that up, those are the ones who commit kufr. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no child is born but that he is upon natural instinct, meaning upon the fitrah. His parents make him a Jew or a Christian or a Magian. As an animal delivers a child with limbs intact, do you detect any flaw? And then Abu Hurairah recited, فِطْرَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي فَطَرَ النَّاسَ عَلَيْهَا, the nature of Allah upon which He has set people. He has sent them into this dunya with the innate disposition, the ability to recognize the oneness of Allah. And then also, why is there a seal placed upon the hearts and the ears of these people, and why is there a veil covering their eyes? This is a natural consequence of their disbelief. Okay? Just like, a machine that is out of service for a while becomes rusty. It cannot function properly anymore. If you don't exercise for a while and then one day you decide you're going to run for 1 hour, your body is going to ache, right? Your body needs time to adjust. So you need to do what? Build up stamina. In Surah As-Saff, verse 5, we learn, فَلَمَّا زَاغُوا أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ وَاللَّهُ لَا يَهْدِي الْقَوْمَ الْفَاسِقِينَ. And when they deviated, Allah caused their hearts to deviate. And Allah does not guide the defiantly disobedient people. These people moved away from the truth again and again and again, and then, yes, of course, finally, there was a seal placed upon their hearts and their faculties. And then also, secondly, this is a punishment, part of the punishment, deserved punishment from Allah, because of these people's continual denial, because of their following desires and becoming arrogant. Just like, when it is that someone is engrossed too much in some activity of this dunya. Imagine a parent trying to advise a child who's playing a video game and is immersed fully in that video game to the extent that even the ears are plugged. This child is like wearing like a headphone, right? Or ear pods or whatever. No matter what is said to this child, there's no reception, right? Because all the faculties and the heart are inclined towards just what this person is consuming, what they're taking in. In Surah An-Nisa, verse 155, we learn, فَبِمَا نَقْضِهِمْ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَكُفْرِهِمْ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَقَتْلِهِمُ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ بِغَيْرِ حَقٍّ. And we curse them for their breaking of the covenant and their disbelief in the signs of Allah and their killing of the prophets without right. And they're saying, قُلُوبُنَا غُلْفٌ. our hearts are wrapped. بَلْ طَبَعَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهَا بِكُفْرِهِمْ. Rather, Allah has sealed them because of their disbelief. So they believe not. فَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. So they believe not except for a few. In Surah Al-Jathiyah, verse 23, we learn, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. Have you seen he who has taken as his God his own desire, and Allah has sent him astray due to knowledge, and has set a seal upon his hearing and his heart, and put over his vision a veil? So what lessons do we learn from this? Number one, if Allah has opened our hearts towards the truth, this is a huge blessing. And we must show gratitude for this. In Surah Al-An'am, verse 125, we learn, فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ. So whoever Allah wants to guide, He expands his breast to contain Islam. The blessing of being able to hear the truth, it's a huge blessing. The blessing to be able to see the truth is a huge blessing. And the blessing of receiving a warning and becoming warned in a timely way, that's a huge blessing also. And also we learn here that a person should remain open-minded and open-hearted, willing to accept the khair, willing to accept the truth. So again, in summary, these verses speak about those who are staunch, pure disbelievers. They know the truth, yet they don't want to accept it. Al-maghdubi alayhim. Those who might even have a lot of ilm, like some of the rabbis of the Ahlul Kitab, the Jews. They had a lot of ilm, but they did not submit to the truth. They didn't accept the truth. The reason? Arrogance. Too much indulgence in worldly desires. Not wanting to let go of their leadership positions. And so they rejected the truth. And so Allah sealed their faculties as a punishment. And in the hereafter, they have severe consequences. So when a person rejects and belittles and does not give importance to the guidance that Allah has offered, then there is punishment for him. He is not granted tawfiq. Now, in the previous verses, we were told to do certain things to be true recipients of guidance that has been offered by Allah. And in these verses, we are warned against the deeds of those who are alladhina kafaru, kufr and kibr, heedlessness. For the first group of the muttaqeen, the pure believers, successful ones, success is to be saved from the hellfire and granted entry into Jannah. And when it comes to the second group, these are alladhina kafaru, those who do know to some extent what they should know, but they don't implement. And so for them is what? Adhabun azim. So the essence of disbelief is rejection or partial rejection. It could be full rejection or partial rejection of that which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought. And also, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, verily, when the disbeliever performs a good deed, he is given a taste of its reward in the world. As for the believer, Allah will store his good deeds for him in the hereafter and provide his sustenance in the world due to his obedience. Okay, let's listen to the recitation of these verses.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ.
We learn of certain supplications that have been taught through which we ask Allah for well-being in terms of our faculties. And this is very important because here we're learning that alladhina kafaru, their faculties are sealed, meaning their faculties are not really of benefit to them. So, we learn of the supplication, Allahumma afini fi badani, Allahumma afini fi sam'i, Allahumma afini fi basari, la ilaha illa ant. Oh Allah, make me healthy in my body. Oh Allah, make me healthy in my hearing. Oh Allah, make me healthy in my vision. There is no God but you. Then also, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-kufri wal-faqr. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. La ilaha illa ant. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from disbelief and poverty. Oh Allah, I seek refuge with you from the punishment of the grave. There is no God but you. Then also Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to make this supplication, Allahumma matti'ni bi sam'i wa basari waj'alhuma waritha minni wansurni ala aduwwi wa arini minhu tha'ri. Oh Allah, let me enjoy my vision and hearing and make them remain sound until I die. Turn away my enemy and grant me revenge on him. Okay, I'd like you to take a minute or so to discuss what you've learned, and then inshallah we will hear your reflections and also address your questions if you have any. Okay, who would like to share a reflection, or in case there's any question you can ask? What did you learn from these two verses? Lesson is pretty short, right? But there's lots to think about. In fact, your reflection question for this lesson is, do I accept the truth open-heartedly? Or does my heart have some resistance? Action points: identify 3 commands that you find difficult to accept and make dua for Allah to soften your heart towards them. And try to learn and make this supplication, Allahumma ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinik. Okay, who has a reflection to share? What did you discuss? Yes, Aida.
My question is, in Surah Al-Fatiha, we learned one of the groups who are, they know the truth, but they don't practice it or implement it. But in here also, like I 7, you mentioned like the people. What about if, my question is, if you choose, like for example, I don't want to learn because I know if I learn I need to implement it and it's gonna cost me, like I'm gonna be accountable. So I choose not to learn, or I choose not to, like, well, I don't see it. So is that also going to be this group, like you mentioned?
It could be. Allah is the judge. He's the best of those who judge and wisest of those who judge in terms of eventual consequences that people will end up with. But yes, it could take a person in that category, in that direction. Because some people have the approach that ignorance is bliss. The less you know, the better off you are. But is that true? No. Ignorance is a big problem. It's not bliss. It's a big problem. right? Which is why we ask for beneficial knowledge, and we continue asking for beneficial knowledge because that's what fuels righteous deeds, right? And it's important that you ask this question. You see, staunch disbelievers existed from amongst, as we identified, mushrikeen of Makkah at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Jahl is one example. But also Ahlul Kitab, these are knowledgeable people. Very knowledgeable, right? So I mentioned to you Huyay ibn Akhtab. He was the chief rabbi of the Jewish tribe of Banu Nadir in Medina. And you know whose father he was? Safiya bint Huyay. Who's that? One of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay. So Safiya bint Huyay, she mentions, okay, that I was the dearest child to my father. Who's her father? Huyay ibn Akhtab. I was the dearest child to my father and my paternal uncle by the name of Abu Yasir. Her uncle's name was Abu Yasir. Whenever they saw me with one of their children, they would pamper me so tenderly to the exclusion of anyone else. However, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam reached Medina and stopped at Quba, my father and my uncle went to see him before dawn and didn't come back until sunset. And remember, the Yahud were living in Medina. Why? Because they had, learned through their own teachings that the last and final messenger is going to come to a land which is rich with date palm trees. They're waiting for the last messenger. So they went to him, Huyay and Abu Yasir. They went to see Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and spent a long time there. She says they came back exhausted, walking slowly, fully dejected. I approached them cheerfully, as I used to. But by Allah, none of them turned to me because of grief that they felt. I heard my uncle say to my father, "Is it really him?" Meaning, is this man really the prophet, the last prophet? And he said, "By Allah, yes. By Allah, yes, it is him." He further asked, "Do you really recognize him?" He answered, "Yes." So then he asked, "What feelings do you have for him?" He said, "Nothing but enmity as long as I live." This is kufr, despite knowledge. Which is why we ask not only for knowledge, but what kind of knowledge? Beneficial knowledge. Okay? All right, anything else? Yes, Aisha.
These verses are just so special to me because it's these exact two verses that completely changed one of my very good friends' life.
Alhamdulillah.
And I have shared this story before, like last batch, but just actually like reflecting on the lessons that I learned from her story, and then just after hearing the tafsir, like subhanAllah, it just hits so hard. So basically, this was a person, her whole life, she hated Islam. Like she came from a country where Islam was very much despised. And she said that her hatred was so strong that she would literally pick up the Qur'an just out of spite, to open it, to criticize it. And she saw like the mention of Allah, and that would make her angry. She was like, "Who are you? Why should I worship you?" And she just closed it out of arrogance. And she said she wasn't even just a disbeliever at the point, she was like an Islamophobe. Like whenever she saw Muslims, her heart would just fill up with hatred. Anyways, one day she was on a flight. It was a 7-hour flight, and she's someone who always needs something to read. And she had just returned from Istanbul, and she's just checking like if there's any material for her to read, like literally anything. And all she had was this souvenir from one of the museums, and it was a very pretty book. So she opens it and she sees it's the Quran, and she's feeling so angry, and she just started reading from like Al-Fatiha, and then she got to this verse. And as soon as she read this verse, or these verses, verse 6 and 7, she realized this is me. I'm not this believer. It's my heart that's been sealed, and my ears, like I'm blind to the truth. And as soon as like she just had that realization that this is her, she started having shivers. And she said she had this very like specific feeling where she just wanted to keep reading and reading. And for the whole rest of that flight, she kept reading. As soon as she landed, she just went straight to the masjid and she took her shahada. And honestly, just reflecting on this and then what we just learned in the seerah, like it just tells me that, you know, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is the doer, just like what we said with Khatam Allah. Like he is the one who placed the seal, but he is also the one who can take that seal away.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
also when it comes to like conveying, we mentioned like sometimes how you can feel hopeless, like never be hopeless because you don't know the power, the true power of the kalam of Allah. Like it wasn't even a person who influenced her, it was her just reading this one verse and that just changed everything for her. And also another thing that I was just thinking about is how it is genuinely when you read the Qur'an, you apply it to yourself, that you're able to be guided.
Yes, very true. Also, yes, it's a reality that because of deserved punishment, certain people's faculties are sealed. But Ar-Rahman allama al-Qur'an. The most merciful taught the Qur'an to all kinds of people and continues to teach the Qur'an to all kinds of people and will continue to teach the Qur'an to all kinds of people. Some will accept it, some will not. Some will initially reject it and then later on accept it. So our hearts always need to remain filled with hope. We can never go into despair about the mercy of Allah. His mercy encompasses all things. Right? And this is why we should make a lot of heartfelt, sincere dua for people who have not perhaps seen or accepted the truth yet. We need to do this, and we need to reach out to them with sincerity, with hope. Guidance is not in our hands. Guidance is in the hands of Allah. Yes, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
There is something I was just thinking about, like when we in the beginning of Surah Baqarah, we talk about taqwa, and taqwa is kind of increased through our amal, right? Our actions of like belief and spending and establishing salah, but also the sealing of the hearts is because of an action of the disbeliever, because they were arrogant and they were consistent on loving the dunya and chasing the dunya, that Allah put a seal on their hearts. And so it's just being mindful of how your amal and like your belief and stuff like that. So to achieve taqwa, you gotta put forth the action as well.
Yes.
And I think the deen is more is knowledge, but knowledge with action, right?
Yeah.
Which is something that we have to keep on, working towards and rectifying it, inshallah.
Yeah. And it's important what you mentioned, that, when it comes to action, we generally think that actions have to do with the body. Taking out some money that belongs to you and giving it in charity, that's an action. It's just one action. What about the actions of the hearts? We overlook those. Okay? We overlook those. Cleaning your heart against someone, forgiving them for the sake of Allah. That's an action of the heart, governed by taqwa. That's a manifestation of taqwa. It might not be a very public manifestation, it's a private one, but it's a manifestation of taqwa. This is what increases a person in guidance. But when we decide to not forgive someone, harbor a lot of hatred and resentment, and a lot of jealousy, that's also an action, as you just mentioned. That's also an action. And then that action does what? Sometimes closes the doors for guidance in a subtle way, in a way that we don't even notice. And then that builds what? A desensitization. And that's very problematic, right? In fact, what we just were reminded of in the context of certain very knowledgeable people amongst the Ahlul Kitab, this is very scary. If you think about it, it's very scary. It should actually scare us because these are very knowledgeable, God-fearing people. They recognize God. And in particular, when it comes to the Yahud, their laws have always been very strict, but they have chosen to follow them. That's saying something about them. And yet, some amongst them, not all, but many amongst them deviated. They allowed arrogance to get in the way and too much love of dunya to get in the way. So it's an important reminder for all of us. We need to always approach acquiring beneficial knowledge with humility. Come back to lesson 2. The beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah encourages us to do what? Beginning with huruf muqatta'at. Recognize we don't know everything. We cannot allow our egos to get in the way when it comes to pursuing knowledge. We have to approach this book always, every single time, with what? Humility. Because look at people who didn't do that. What happened in their case? Okay, anything else anybody would like to share? Yes, go ahead. Yes, your name is Amina, right? You wanted to share something?
Yeah, I was just thinking that how Allah has left them to this world. They have nothing to worry about other than worldly gains. Like Abu Jahl, he was a leader, and how he misinterpreted everything and made people follow him.
Yes.
And he was jealous from Prophet ﷺ in a way that Allah has chosen him to be the messenger and guider of all human beings. So they didn't want to give up their authority on other human beings. So this was worldly gain they wanted.
Wanting people to come to you for, advice, wanting to be the center of attention. This is very problematic. Okay, this leads a person towards becoming more people conscious than Allah conscious. What do we want to be? More Allah conscious, not people conscious. Right? Yes. Go ahead, Mariam.
Okay, so this ayah where it says that Allah has set a seal upon their hearts, and when we say,
Okay.
It just
A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim.
it just reminds me that this ayah obviously applies to some people, but it doesn't apply to others. Where one time I watched this one YouTube short where this guy, he used to be, again, like a hater of Islam, like a complete Islamophobe. And he's like, one day I picked up the Qur'an to dissect it, to dismantle it, to find faults in it. And then he starts reading and reading and reading, and he's like, there's no faults in this book. And then like a few videos later, he accepts Islam.
Yeah, Allahu Akbar.
But then there's also those kind of people that were born Muslims, but now they are disbelievers. There's this one celebrity, I'm not going to say his name, but I'm sure you guys can figure out who he is, that he was born Muslim, he's a Pakistani. He became a celebrity at quite a young age, and because that he lived in that kind of environment for a long time, he completely deviated from Islam, and now he's like, I don't believe in any of the rules or anything.
May Allah guide him.
Even though his sisters, they wear the hijab, they're following, but he's not around his family at all.
Allahu Akbar. Hence, you see the importance associated with this this dua that we make regularly. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Guide us, all of us, towards the path that is straight. We all need guidance. Also, lastly, before we move on and take a look at some portion of the next lesson, just like there are levels of kufr, accordingly there are levels of adab also, punishment. Okay? Just like there are levels of kufr, there are also levels of punishment. And so, we need to be mindful of the fact that all of our actions, they come with consequences. All of our actions, they come with consequences. Consequences that have to do with the hereafter, the eternal abode. And this is why Iman bil Ghaib is so important. Okay? And on that note, when it comes to kufr, there is the kufr of Abu Jahl. There is the kufr of Abu Talib also. They're not exactly the same. Who's Abu Talib? The uncle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Did he die a Muslim? No. Okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, among the inhabitants of the fire, Abu Talib would have the least suffering. And he would be wearing 2 shoes of fire which would boil his brain. I mean, it is a punishment for sure. But if this is the least punishment, can you imagine the kind of punishment that the likes of Abu Jahl would receive? So everyone is not the same in terms of kufr, and everyone is not the same in terms of punishment for kufr. And this is a matter that Allah judges. We don't judge. We don't judge. We only know of what it is that Allah has informed us of. Right? And so we also need to refrain from saying about people that such and such person is at this level of kufr, such and such person is at that level of kufr. This punishment is for this person, and that punishment is for that person. Because we don't know. Unless Allah informs us, right? Like when we learn from hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said this about Abu Talib, then we know. But apart from this, we cannot say anything. We need to be careful about this matter. We cannot go around labeling people this way and that way. Okay? All right. Are you ready to move on to the next lesson? Yes? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these verses of the next lesson, and we will take a look at the words, we will take a look at some of the meanings of the words. Okay? We will not complete the lesson. Inshallah, we will come back to this lesson. This lesson happens to be actually a little bit longer. You will find many new words. Okay, so we would like for you to really understand this lesson well. So inshallah, we will give it some more time. Okay, we will take gradual steps in terms of completing this lesson. All right? Is that okay? Are you happy about that? No? You should be happy, right? If ease has been created, then your faces should show that ease has been created. You should be smiling. You should be happy. Okay, alhamdulillah. Also keep in mind, the length of lessons depends on the theme. So you may be like, okay, but the previous lesson was like 2 verses, and now this lesson, verse 8 to 16. What's going on? It has to do with the theme. It's not random. It's calculated. Okay? Now, this next lesson, lesson number 4, is not just 2 verses, it's 9 verses. Okay? And here we're learning about, again, another type of people. Okay? Which type? Hypocrites, those who claim to be believers, but they're actually not. Their case is a little bit more complicated. Hence, the description is also longer. Okay? So, let's take a look at lesson number 4, Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 8 to 16. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and of the people, مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. There are some who say, we believe in Allah and the last day. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, but they are not believers. يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, they think to deceive Allah and those who believe. وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ, but they deceive not except themselves and perceive it not. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ, in their hearts is disease. فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا, so Allah has increased their disease. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, and for them is a painful punishment. بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ, because they habitually used to lie. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, and when it is said to them, to whom? The hypocrites. لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ, do not cause corruption on the earth. قَالُوا, they say, meaning the hypocrites say, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ, we are but reformers, which is another lie, because they habitually lie. This is one of their main traits. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, verily it is they who are the corrupters, but they perceive it not. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ, and when it is said to them, meaning to these hypocrites, آمِنُوا, believe, كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسِ, as the people have believed. قَالُوا, they say, meaning these hypocrites say, أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ, should we believe as the foolish have believed? أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ السُّفَهَاءُ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ, verily it is they who are the foolish, but they know it not. In reality, they are the foolish ones, although they claim that they're very intelligent. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا, and when they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ, but when they are alone with their evil ones, قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ, they say, indeed, we are with you, at your service. And what else do they say? إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ, we were only mockers, mocking at the believers, by way of saying, we believe, we believe. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim, but Allah mocks them. وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ, and prolongs them in their transgression while they wander blindly. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ, those are the ones who have purchased error in exchange for guidance. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, so their transaction has brought no profit, nor were they guided. Now this last statement, وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ, is very important. The muttaqeen are the ones who are successful. They're the ones who internalize guidance. These people for sure are not guided. They have not internalized guidance. This has been mentioned about them explicitly. وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. Again, in Surah Al-Fatiha, we learned about الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ and الضَّالِّينَ. الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ, we learned about their traits at the beginning of this surah. They're the ones with ilm and amal. So some verses were revealed concerning them and their descriptions. 4 verses, ending with أُولَٰئِكَ عَلَى هُدًى مِّن رَبِّهِمْ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. They are ala huda, upon guidance. These are the guided ones. And then another group, the outright disbelievers, we learned about them in verse 6 and 7. 2 verses were revealed about them. And Allah mentions about them, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ عَظِيمٌ. And then there is another group, 13 verses are revealed concerning them. These are the people who think they know what they need to know, but actually, in actuality, they don't know. And they choose to remain like this. They don't know, they don't want to know. And what they do know, they know with faulty understanding. So it could even be that they have some amount of hidayah irshad, but what's missing? Hidayah tawfiq. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. They claim to be believers at the level of the tongue, but they are actually disbelievers at the level of the heart. So the third type of people will be discussed over here in several verses. Again, the first group, pure mu'minin. Second group, pure kafirin. Third group, the ones in between. So the way muttaqeen have some clear signs through which they can be recognized, these people in the third category, they can also be recognized through clear signs. What are their traits? Here Allah mentions وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and of the people. Min here gives the meaning of some. min of tab'id, partitive, indicating some of the people. And an-nas, this word, it actually appears many times in the Qur'an, 240 times. Okay? And this word is actually al-unas. Al-unas. But it has been eased in terms of pronunciation and turned into an-nas instead of al-unas, with the elimination of the hamza. And it is understood as a plural word that has no singular. Now, we find for this word several root letters, sets of root letters. Number one, nun waw sin. Nun waw sin, from which we derive naus. Naus means to swing back and forth, to dangle. So what's the connection between naus and an-nas, which means people? Human beings, they move around, they go back and forth physically and emotionally all the time, don't they? Okay. So an-nas, the people or the mankind, from naus. Naus means to dangle, to swing back and forth, to move. Human beings move a lot, physically and emotionally. Another set of root letters for the term an-nas, nun sin ya, from which we derive the term nisyan. What does nisyan mean? To forget. What's the connection between an-nas and this word nisyan? We forget a lot, right? So don't worry if you try memorizing your lesson, especially a long lesson, and then you say, oh, I forgot. You're a human being. Don't give up. Just revise. Another set of root letters for the term an-nas. Hamza nun sin. Okay, Hamza nun sin, from which we derive the term uns. Uns means familiarity, sociability, to develop association, to have friendship. So what's the connection between an-nas and uns? Human beings generally like to be able to socialize, right? They like to develop associations and friendships. So there are some among an-nas, some amongst people who are like this, the way that has been described. And notice they are not given a specific title. Allah has neither associated these people directly with kufr nor with iman. Notice. Because this is their reality. They are neither clearly disbelievers nor are they clearly believers. And we learn in Surah An-Nisa another description in verse number 143 of these people. مُذَبْذَبِينَ بَيْنَ ذَلِكَ لَا إِلَهَ أُولَٰئِ وَلَا إِلَهَ أُولَٰئِ. Wavering between them, belonging neither to the believers nor to the disbelievers. That's the reality. So these people are hypocrites, munafiqun, who suffer from nifaq. Nafaqa basically means kharaja, to leave. Nafaqun, as we learned earlier also, in the context of yunfiqun, right? It's a hole, it's used for a hole, like a tunnel, okay? The term nafqa is used for a kind of a mouse that has an underground tunnel with multiple openings that it can quickly go to hide from a predator, but then it can also find an escape quickly. Hypocrites, munafiqeen, enter into deen from one entrance, and when things get tough, they exit. They're not committed. So the way muttaqeen and kafirin have certain signs, munafiqeen also have certain signs. And these signs are being mentioned here so we can analyze ourselves, so that we can improve ourselves. Now also keep in mind, the kind of hypocrisy of belief that puts one beyond the pale of Islam is that which Allah ascribed to the hypocrites in this surah and elsewhere. Hypocrisy did not exist before the migration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Mecca to Medina. After he migrated, the Battle of Badr took place. Allah caused the believers to prevail and made them victorious. And those people in Medina who had not yet become Muslims were humiliated. For that reason, some of them pretended to be Muslims because it looked good, out of fear, by way of deception, in order to protect themselves and their wealth from the Muslims who had the upper hand after the Battle of Badr. So they lived amongst the Muslims pretending to be of them, but in reality they were not of them. Their case is being described here. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ, and of the people, مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ, there are some who say, we believe in Allah. يَقُولُ from qaf waw lam, from which we derive the term qawl, which means statement. There are some who say, we believe in Allah, آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, and the last day. So they say this with their tongues. They verbally proclaim that they have belief in Allah and belief in the last day. But what does Allah declare about them? وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, but they are not believers. Notice here, بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, this ba over here gives what meaning? It is actually ba that is considered to be zaid, extra. Extra doesn't mean meaningless. It just means we don't translate it in the literal sense. Because be, as we've learned earlier, also can have 17 different meanings. One of them is with, right? Or in. So here we don't translate be as with, because that wouldn't even make sense. Okay? Here this ba has been added for the purpose of emphasis, indicating what? They are not at all believers. This inclusion of not at all is because of be. وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ, they are not at all believers. Because they're saying with their tongues what is not in their hearts. So what do we learn from this? Verbal statements alone are not enough. Just talk alone does not benefit a person. Like it is said, Al-qawl bil-lisan la yanfa'ul insan. Just a statement alone, uttered by the tongue, is not really of benefit to a human being. The heart and tongue should coincide, be in sync, be aligned. Because when there is a difference in speech and what is in the heart, then that is what gives way to hypocrisy. Qatada, he said that this verse is the description of a hypocrite. He says one thing with his tongue, but denies it in his heart. Affirms with his tongue, but contradicts in his action. And enters the morning in one state and the night in another. Some people usually have this thinking that other people don't know what is in my heart. So they say whatever they want to say. And if you think about it, self-contradiction is the worst kind of disease. But people forget that there is a being who knows everything, who hears everything. In Surah Ali Imran, we learn in verse number 29, قُلْ إِن تُخْفُوا مَا فِي صُدُورِكُمْ أَوْ تُبْدُوهُ يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ وَيَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Say, whether you conceal what is in your breasts or reveal it, أَوْ تُبْدُوهُ, the reality remains what? يَعْلَمْهُ اللَّهُ. Allah knows it. And وَيَعْلَمُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. He knows that which is in the heavens and that which is on the earth. So in order to obtain and internalize guidance, our speech must be according to what is in our hearts. And then Allah mentions further, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They, these hypocrites, think to deceive Allah and those who believe. The term يُخَادِعُون from خَاء دال عين. خَدَعَ يَخْدَعُ means to deceive, to conceal the reality, to keep the other in the dark about a certain matter, to say something and do something else. خَادِع is one who is deceptive. Khadi'ah is treachery. And this form of the word yukhadi'un, with this alif after the kha, It conveys the meaning of trying to deceive, attempting to deceive. There is effort involved. And also this implies together, collectively as a group, they plot and they scheme trying to deceive. They cooperate with each other. Now, in order to really understand this, a brief background needs to be understood. Rasulullah ﷺ was in Mecca for 13 years. The mushrikeen were the ones who opposed him. So there were two groups at that time, the true believers and the outright disbelievers. But when he migrated to Medina, after the Battle of Badr took place, after the Muslims were victorious in that battle, they acquired war booty also, right? When the enemy fled. After the establishment of the Islamic State, what happened? Those whose hearts were filled with love of this dunya, they wanted worldly benefits. They wanted to have the power and the benefits that the Muslims were gaining. And so they outwardly proclaimed their Islam. But in their hearts, they didn't really believe. So when they saw that the Muslims were gaining heights, to have some of that worldly gain, that glory, they apparently became Muslims. They proclaimed Iman, but in their hearts, they didn't care much about it. And we find such types of people in every era. Their hearts are actually engrossed in this life, this dunya, but they just wait for some benefit, this worldly benefit to come their way. And so they outwardly come to the sides of the Muslims. And they just want to take, they don't want to give. They want to be on the receiving end, not on the giving end. So what do we learn from this? The makr, the plotting and the scheming of the hypocrites, their deception, their being untrustworthy, unreliable. This is one of their main signs, their deception. In Surah Al-Munafiqun, verse 4, we learn, Humul adu fahdharhum. They are enemy, so be cautious of them. The believers must be on guard against deceptive people, against hypocrites. Allah is describing them so that we can become careful. And how do we know who falls into this category? Look at discrepancies in speech and action. Okay? What do these people say? What do they do? If on the surface they show a lot of love for Islam through words only, slogans only, but in reality they're actively working against the Muslims and Islam, then they're not sincere. And in life you will come across people who will actually be very nice to you in front of your face, verbally. But behind your back, what will they do? Cause people to go against you and harm you. So be on guard. Here Allah mentions, وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. But they deceive not except themselves and perceive it not. Because often a person who digs a hole for somebody else to fall into, falls into that hole himself. As we learn in Surah Fatir, verse number 43, وَلَا يَحِيقُ الْمَكْرُ السَّيِّئُ إِلَّا بِأَهْلِهِ. But the evil plot does not encompass except its own people. And here Allah mentions, وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And they perceive it not. If they were to use their minds even a little bit, they would realize that they were actually deceiving themselves first before deceiving anybody else. And there is a saying that whoever tries to deceive someone who is not deceived has deceived himself. And this is so true. Because if someone tries to deceive a person who knows the reality, this person is not really deceiving that person. They're first of all deceiving their own selves. And this is a proof that the hypocrites don't recognize Allah. So be cautious about such people. Deal with hypocrites with greater caution. Deal with them with greater caution. And then in the next verse, we learn that Allah openly tells us about their state of heart. What the state of heart is of a munafiq. How are they internally? في قلوبهم مرض. In their hearts is disease. مرض from mim ra dad. Marad applies to physical and even spiritual imbalance in a person. And here marad is referring to shak and nifaq, doubt and hypocrisy. This is the disease of shubuhat, doubts in religion, and also following shahawat, desires. So in their hearts is a disease that started off as something maybe relatively small, marad, but it remained and thus turned into nifaq. فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. So Allah has increased their disease. Fa over here in فَزَادَهُم gives the meaning of sabab, reason or cause. So implying what? Because they didn't cure the small ailment, as a result, Allah increased their disease. They didn't try to remedy the smaller illness, so then the illness increased. Allah allowed for it to increase. And also, because they are already inclined towards kufr, Allah increased their disease. So the punishment for a sin is more sin. Just like the reward for good deeds is tawfiq to do more good deeds. So when these people didn't cure the disease in their hearts, the doubts, the shubuhat, and the shahawat, Allah caused the marad to increase. And that is why, if a person finds that he's doubting something that he shouldn't really doubt, is ignorant about something, he should cure it right away. You shouldn't fall into that trap of thinking that ignorance is bliss. Because if you allow doubts to just kind of breed within you, this becomes into a big disease. And how do you remove doubts? Through knowledge. Accessing beneficial knowledge from the Qur'an and Sunnah, from the company of righteous people. And here Allah mentions, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, and for them is a painful punishment. The term alim from Hamza Lam Mim. Alam means to feel pain. Alam means to feel pain. And alim on the structure of fa'il, in which there is continuity, repetitiveness. So punishment that is alim, meaning continuous and repetitive, causing alam, causing pain on an ongoing basis. So alim meaning extremely painful, excruciating, intense, continuously causing pain. And this is referring to the punishment of the hellfire. And also this punishment is more painful for these people because it will not only be physical, it will also be emotional. In Surah An-Nisa verse 145 we learn, إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِي الدَّرْكِ الْأَسْفَلِ مِنَ النَّارِ وَلَن تَجِدَ لَهُمْ نَصِيرًا. Indeed, the hypocrites will be in the lowest depths of the fire, and never will you find for them a helper. And also in Surah Al-Hajj verse 22 we learn, كُلَّمَا أَرَادُوا أَن يَخْرُجُوا مِنْهَا مِنْ غَمٍّ أُعِيدُوا فِيهَا وَذُوقُوا عَذَابَ الْحَرِيقِ. Every time they want to get out of hellfire from anguish, they will be returned to it, and it will be said, taste the punishment of the burning fire. So you see the physical agony plus the emotional agony. And why is this terrible punishment going to be given to them? بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ, because they habitually used to lie. يَكْذِبُونَ from kaf dhal ba. The term kadhib is used for a lie, uttering falsehood, giving information that is contrary to the reality deliberately. And when this term kanu is used before a fi'l, before a verb, yakdibun is a verb, again, because it's beginning with ya, third person, and then waw noon plural. The term kanu coming before this verb gives the meaning of a continual action, something being done habitually. Bima kanu yakdibun, because they habitually used to lie. And what did they lie about? The claim of being believers. That's a lie. They're not believers actually. They're saying, Amanna billahi wa bil yawmil akhir. That's a lie. And also here there is a severe warning for the hypocrites. Because there are two types of hypocrisy, according to many scholars, including Ibn Rajab. Hypocrisy in aqidah and hypocrisy in actions. Hypocrisy in aqidah meaning this deals with the rights of Allah. A person saying that he believes in Allah, but at the level of the heart, this person doesn't. This takes a person out of the folds of Iman. Outwardly displaying to be a Muslim, but inwardly being a disbeliever. But then there is hypocrisy in actions. This deals with the rights of people, such as showing off. A person does something good, but does it for the sake of some people, praise from them. This does not exclude a person from the folds of Islam. Then also we learn here the blameworthiness of lying. Lying is one of the worst traits. And also when it comes to hypocrisy of deeds, of actions, the way a person is acting being contrary to how they should be acting. This is making a person sinful. Rasulullah ﷺ said there are 4 signs that make someone a pure hypocrite. And whoever has them has a characteristic of hypocrisy until he abandons it. When he speaks, he lies. When he makes a covenant, he is treacherous. When he makes a promise, he breaks it. And when he argues, he is wicked. So, what do we learn from this hadith? This hadith actually teaches us a lot. Okay. First of all, these signs of hypocrites are being mentioned so that we stay away from these traits. And also it is mentioned, there are 4 signs that make someone a hypocrite, and whoever has them has a characteristic of hypocrisy until he abandons it. There's a way to come out of it. Okay? And 2 points that we can note in light of this hadith is that a person from the Muslims involved in these vices that we learn from this hadith is not to be labeled a hypocrite. Is not to be labeled a hypocrite. The hypocrite referred to in the Qur'an is the one who is a hypocrite in terms of aqidah, in terms of creed. Okay? And the majority of the scholars believe, as was mentioned earlier also, hypocrisy didn't exist before the migration of Rasulullah ﷺ from Makkah to Medina, and more specifically after the Battle of Badr. Ibn Jurayj, he said about the munafiq that his actual deeds are different from what he publicizes. What he conceals is different from what he utters. His entrance and presence are not the same as his exit and absence. So Iman is about being honest, and hypocrisy about being dishonest. So what we learn here is that if a person wants to be safe from the punishment, he must leave lying, even while joking, because it's a punishable act. Rasulullah ﷺ said, abide by truthfulness, for indeed truthfulness leads to righteousness, and indeed righteousness leads to Jannah. A man continues telling the truth and trying hard to tell the truth until he is recorded with Allah as a truthful person. Refrain from falsehood, for indeed falsehood leads to wickedness, and wickedness leads to the fire. A slave of Allah continues lying and trying hard to lie until he is recorded with Allah as a liar. So if we want to be in the category of true, pure believers, we must leave sins, especially lying, because that's a big hindrance in the path of guidance. In Surah Ghafir, verse 28, we learn, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَهْدِي مَنْ هُوَ مُسْرِفٌ كَذَّابٌ. Indeed, Allah does not guide one who is a transgressor and a liar. So make a firm commitment today. Take this as one of the main action points that you're going to think about, remind yourself and others of throughout the weekend also. Lies have to be totally out of my life. If I want to internalize guidance, lies have to be totally out of my life. Okay? All right, so inshallah we will stop here for today. So what you will do, inshallah, over the weekend is review your lesson up until where it is that we have stopped now. Okay, up until verse number 10. Okay, and on Monday, inshallah, we will continue the same lesson from verse number 11 onwards. All right, inshallah. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر ولله الحمد